Start with some introductions. My name is Dr. Caroline Bass. I'm an associate professor in pharmacology and toxicology, and I'm the director of graduate studies for our graduate program in pharmacology. So I'm the person that will help run the program. If you have any problems, you come talk to me. We're here to talk about the program and introduce you guys and see if you have any questions about the process, what you can get out of a degree in pharmacology. So why don't I just let everybody introduce themselves, starting with you, Beth? You want to just say a couple words about what you do?
Sure. Hi, my name is Beth White, and I'm the Director of Graduate Enrollment in the Jacobs School of Medicine. I work broadly with our graduate programs, and I'm here just to kind of give you the broader focus in case any questions are come up about that.
I am Liz Marshall Metcalf. I am the graduate program coordinator for pharmacology and toxicology. So when you get started here, I'll be the one kind of helping you decide or help you look for labs, sign up for courses, any questions that you might have that I can't answer. I can find someone who does. Submitting forms to the graduate school, things like that go through me. So just consider me your go-to person for practical issues and things like that. So welcome.
I'm Martin Pugiles. I'm the chair of pharmacology and toxicology, and I'm also the coordinator of graduate admissions within the department. So in your applications, you might get an email from me requesting additional information, or if you send a question, I might be answering it.
So we have a presentation today. I did want to do introductions just so that you guys know if you do apply for the program. You'll probably be working with Martin quite a bit on that application process. Each graduate program has their own admissions, and so we'll go over that process as well. So let me see if I can share this presentation with you guys. Yes. You guys see all that?
Yes.
I hope. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the department. And so, we're going to introduce you guys to what pharmacology and toxicology is and give you some idea of what you can actually do with a master's in pharmacology. Change this so I can see it better. So what exactly is pharmacology? This is actually pretty important because there are a lot of fields with the term pharma in it. So what does that actually mean? Pharma usually refers to some sort of drug or drug process. What pharmacologists do is that we study the science behind how drugs are different types of chemicals, how they affect our bodies and how our bodies process these drugs. All right. And so for the most part, we're talking about, we often talk about what's called small drug molecules. So these are, what you typically think of in terms of pharmaceuticals. So aspirin, Tylenol, asthma medications, things of that sort. But a lot of things actually fall under this. So it's basically anything from insulin, which is a protein, to these small drug molecules like aspirin. In addition to that, we study how natural substances in the body, such as hormones and neurotransmitters, how they affect the environment. There's a kind of an interesting interplay between pharmacology and toxicology. We're one of the few programs where you can where your degree is in both. So pharmacology is the study of drugs, but if you go high enough, any drug can be toxic. So toxicology is the study of the adverse effects of these drugs. So it's really just where you are on the drug effect curve. So the higher up in dose you go, the more likely you are to get a toxic side effect. So again, there's a lot of different pharma type of careers out there. The most common one is as a pharmacist. So these are folks, they're very important jobs, but if you're interested in pharmacy, you would be applying to the School of Pharmacy. All right. And so these are folks that administer the drugs in a clinical setting and make sure that when you are prescribed a drug. There's no adverse effect or interaction with other drugs that you might be taking. So very important career, but that's not what we do. Okay, we're pharmacologists and we study these drugs and we try to come up with better drug treatments and a better understanding of how these drugs affect people and can be used in different treatment modalities. So we're the basic scientists behind the use of pharmaceuticals, including drug development. And then as you go further along, toxicology, because all these drugs, if given in high enough dose, will produce some sort of toxic effects. So it's really important that you distinguish those two, pharmacists from pharmacologists. Okay, so why would you actually choose to get a master's in pharmacology? What's the benefits? So a lot of people choose to get a master's for many different reasons. One is very often, if you have a master's degree, that puts you in a really nice position for going on to a PhD program. So especially if, sometimes when you're in your undergraduate career, you don't know what you want to do. You may not know what course of study you want. And so you sort of fall into basic research or science at a late stage, and perhaps your application isn't very strong or as strong as it could be because of that. And so a lot of students decide to get a master's program, one, to explore what it's like to do research and to see if that's the type of field they want to be in, the type of career they want. And two, because if they decide to go on to a PhD program, the master's positions you very well for that. But, I think it's important for you to understand that just getting a master's in pharmacology and toxicology alone can prepare you for a lot of careers. And they can serve as a strong foundation for graduate work in general, whether you decide to go on to a neuroscience program or cancer or whatever you want to study in the future. But it also prepares you for all sorts of professional schools. It can position you. So, for example, a lot of our graduates go on to medical and dental school. It positions you well if you decide you want a career in research, but you don't want to be at the PhD level. There's a lot of jobs in the pharmaceutical and biotech sections of industry. Some of our students go on more into science communication and science policy, which is, interacting with the public and helping bring science to the general community. So, for example, right now with the COVID-19 epidemic, being able to convey what vaccines do, for example, and how they work, it's really important. So our students have a foundation for going into science communications, but there's everything under the sun these days that you can do with a master's degree, including, for example, patent law. So some people will go on to get a degree like an MBA or something like that and combine that with the what they've learned with an MS in pharmacology and toxicology. So there's a lot of ways you can use this degree. So what will you actually do in the program? So first, I think that one thing that I want to emphasize is that within our department, the program is a research-based program. So everyone is expected to enter a lab and to start a course of research with a mentor. This is a person, a PhD, a faculty member in our department, who will mentor you through the process of developing a hypothesis, understanding a research question, then developing a hypothesis and a set of experiments to probe that hypothesis. So you'll understand how to, it's basically getting your foot in the door into the process of biomedical research. So you'll get your hands on a lot of different techniques. You'll learn a lot of different things. So, this is not going to be like an undergrad where you go into a laboratory and you fill out a worksheet and everybody can figure out what will happen and they know the answers. So in this case, you're going in and with a lot of guidance from your mentor, you can possibly learn something that no one else knows at any given time. You know, you're asking a very specific question and you're going to learn how to basically set up an experiment to figure out what is going on, what is the underlying mechanisms of the system you're studying. You'll learn a lot of collaborative skills. A lot of people don't realize that scientists, we're not the most socially adept people all the time, but to be successful in science, you have to have a lot of communication skills. You have to have a lot of skills, organizational skills, leadership skills. And so you'll start to learn those processes. If you have a degree in science, an undergraduate degree, you can go into a laboratory in industry and get a job. That's a career path available to you now, but you go to get a master's because you learn a lot of the communication skills and a lot of the organizational skills that take you up a notch in terms of the type of research that you can do. So that's a very important part of what you're doing, getting a master's. And then, of course, you're contributing to science. What you do can have an impact while you're in the master's program. So many of our students will publish their research. So you're actually contributing to an ongoing research program into many current health issues and problems that we're facing as a society. So just to give you some, these are just some recent studies that have come out from my laboratory, but others as well. Dr. Dietz is the chair of the department. He does a lot of work in drug abuse. Dr. Sim does a lot of work with multiple sclerosis and different ways to promote remyelination. So our faculty are constantly putting out research that impacts our society, impacts our ability to treat different conditions. Dr. Paez is also in the field of multiple sclerosis, but Dr. Bhattacharjee is, for example, in the field of pain research, as well as Dr. Lee. But there's a broad range of research represented by the faculty in pharmacology. A lot of us do neuropharmacology, so we're sort of brain oriented, but there's actually a pretty broad range, everything from cardiovascular to nanotechnology to cancer pharmacology. So let's talk a little bit about where our students go. So I'm going to go through some of the career paths that our recent graduates have taken. This is Jacqueline. She actually got her master's degree in my lab. You know, it was a really tough time last year because we were dealing with lab closures. So the labs had to shut down when the COVID epidemic first came about. So that was very disruptive to a lot of students, but we managed to make sure that all our students graduated on time. It's really important for us that you guys make strong progress towards your degree and that you finish in the 2-year time span. But Jacqueline went ahead, graduated on time, and got a really nice position at CRISPR Therapeutics in San Francisco. So she moved out there last summer and she's doing quite well. Panina went on to dental school. So the master's degree in pharmacology helped set her up for dental school. You know, a lot of students who are, again, they may want to go to medical school or dental school or any number of professional schools, but they came to that decision late. And so maybe their GPA isn't as competitive as they want to be. Well, if you come into our program, you can prove quite readily that you can do advanced coursework. And so it really helps sometimes fill in a gap in your application if that's the path you want to go. Several of my students have gone on to medical school, for example. Panina is a scientist in Massachusetts, and as well as Hirika has also gone on to Cambridge, Massachusetts. So there's a lot of biotech companies out there. Let's see. My screen is a little blocked, but oops. So Kaliana is, I think, a good example of a student who decided that they wanted to get a PhD. So they did their master's degree, and that made her a very competitive candidate. So she's doing her PhD in neuroscience at the University of Utah. Samantha Van Etten, I believe she graduated in 2017 with a master's, and she transitioned from the master's program. She got her master's degree, and then she started in a PhD, basically in pharmacology and toxicology, but her focus was on toxicology. And so now she works for the FDA, but she got her PhD in 2020, so she's doing quite well. Government work is actually one of the, especially for toxicology, that's a wonderful career. Everybody needs a toxicologist. So it's a very steady career. There's always job opportunities in government and in industry for toxicologists. Robert is at the University of Utah, a laboratory specialist. That's another thing that you often see with our graduates. They continue in academic research, so they might get a lab tech position, for example, or a lab manager position at Buffalo, at UB, or University of Rochester, for example, or anywhere around the United States. But again, we have lots of representation in the pharmaceutical industry, the biotech industry, lots of wet bench lab positions. Let's see, sorry. So how do you go about, what's the application process? And if there's any questions, but by all means, we'll do a little question answer at the end, but please speak up if you have any question along the way. So first, you have to complete the application form. You need your transcripts, and then 3 letters of recommendation. And these are important. You know, we don't expect, if you were applying for a PhD, it would be important that you have a letter of recommendation from someone that you did research with, for example, when you're an undergraduate. But for a master's program, we don't exactly expect you to have a lot of experience doing research already. So if you do, that's fantastic, but that is by no means a requirement. We actually expect that a lot of people are applying to get that research experience. So a resume and a personal statement is very helpful. This is your opportunity in the personal statement to talk about why you want to get a master's degree. It's perfectly acceptable to want to get a master's degree to explore biomedical research if that's an option for you. In other words, it's perfectly acceptable to not know exactly what you want to do at this stage, but to use the master's degree to figure that out. If you have any problems with your transcripts, if you have any, for example, sometimes students have a bad semester, something happened that really distracted them. Well, your personal statement is a time that you can go in and actually state that and explain anything that might be considered a weakness in your application. One thing is we do have, I believe we have a slot that you can put in GRE scores, but they are actually not required. So if you have them, great, but you don't have to report them if you don't want to. The deadline is February 14th, so that's coming up quickly. And Martin Pugiles is the person who you would coordinate the most with. So when you fill out your application, that will go to our admissions committee when it's complete, and we'll review the applications and get back to you with whether or not you've been accepted into the program. So the criteria for acceptance, what the admission committee looks for is the GPA is actually important. They look at your entire transcript to see what kind of classes you took. I mean, it's more, you know, they take into account that you may have had a very heavy semester, for example. So it's a lot more impressive if you have, for example, a 3.5, but you're taking a heavy course load, than if you have a 3.7 taking a light course load. So they look at the entire transcript. They look at any research experience you might have. But again, we realize that at this stage of your career, you may not have a lot of research experience. Nonetheless, in your personal statement, you should really explain what research experience you do have and what it is that you're interested in, particularly in terms of research experience. So again, I can't emphasize enough that our program is research-based. There are some master's degree programs where you can go in and basically do a literature search and explore a question just by looking at what other people have published. That's not what our program's about. Our program is about getting you into a laboratory and doing your own research. And at the end, you will write hopefully you'll get data that can be published, be part of a publication that your mentor puts out. But at the end, you will have written a thesis, which is like a small book on your research topic and the experiments that you did and your results. And you will present that to the department, and it will eventually be published as in the thesis section of our library so that anyone can download it. So typically our program accepts around 10 applicants per year. Last year, the entire university had a crazy number of applications. And so there were a lot of students that joined the department last year. So it might be, I don't know if that was a fluke, but it was very competitive last year. Once the committee reviews all the applications, they'll decide whether or not to accept you and send you. I believe we always interview our students before we send out a letter of acceptance. So you would work with Martin to schedule that. So that's pretty much it. There's a website that you can go to the website to look up. I mean, if you look up PMY and UB, you usually get, you can usually find our website. Someone raised their hand and I don't know. So that's pretty much it. I'm trying to get back to the chat so that I can see who tried to talk. Does someone have a question?
Yes, hello. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes, this is Abdul Razak from Ghana.
Hi, how are you doing?
Yes, I'm doing very well. My question is on the GRE. The GRE. You made mention that the GRE is not required, but those who have it can still submit it. So what I really want to find out is, during the whole process of reviewing the application, if I did not submit my GRE and then another applicant submit the GRE, would you use the GRE as a basis in determining whose application is stronger?
So,
Thank
you know, I'm not a big fan of standardized tests myself. And I think that the GREs are a really poor metric for showing who will succeed in our programs. So I'm not on the admissions committee, so I can't speak entirely for them, but the general rule of thumb around the medical school is that we'll never use the GREs to exclude people. The lack of GRE, I mean, it's nice if you have a good GRE, but again, the scores are not very predictive of success. So I don't think that they count for very much. I have never seen a case where the GRE was a deciding factor in anything. I mean, it's just, we look at the whole application. And so we will look at your GRE scores. If you have poor GRE scores, I probably wouldn't report it. If you have good ones, then by all means report it. I know some programs use them, but there's a lot of evidence that say that GREs don't really do much in terms of helping us predict who will be successful students in our program. So I don't think that they'll in any way become a deciding factor. Does that make sense?
Yes, but would it increase my chances of getting accepted, or would it make my application stronger than another applicant?
I mean, if you had identical applications and you had a great GRE, it probably would help a tiny bit, but I really don't think it would actually. I don't think anyone would ever be weighing two applications that were pretty similar and say, well, this one has a great GRE. I mean, like I said, it doesn't really predict much. So I don't think a GRE score will tell anyone whether or not you'll wind up having good hands in the lab and being able to do research. I mean, personally, I'd say no, it doesn't really help you that much. Now, there's an argument for where GREs are helpful, but I don't think that really applies to master's level. I think it might be some slightly helpful for some applicants in a PhD program, but yeah. So I don't know, Martin. Do you have any sense of whether or not GREs are really weighed very carefully in the admissions process?
I think where GREs used to be helpful were in international admissions, because universities throughout the world have very different ways of grading their students. So a lot of times it just put everybody in the same boat so you could do an easy comparison. But like you said, it's not predictive in a way that's helpful. So our admissions committee was told not to use that as a criteria. But as you stated, if you have good GRE scores, it couldn't hurt. I don't think it's something that you would upload if you didn't have a really good score. So that's, I think, the extent of it.
Yeah, you're not required to upload them, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So if you didn't have great scores, I wouldn't upload them. But like I said, I mean, there's a possibility it could help in some ways, and I think in some that international applicants, if you have a fantastic GRE score, it might help somewhat. Just because sometimes it's a little hard to judge international applications. We're less familiar with the universities and things of that nature, but I really don't see it as being all that useful. And that's, I mean, having done this for a long time, that's something that seems to be pretty universally true. If they were a really good metric, we would be encouraging people to actually upload this.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to ask that I have already applied to the. I wasn't sure which I am eligible for masters in pharmacology or not. So I applied to both the programs, pharmacology and even for the pharmaceutical science. So will it cause any problem?
No, those are two different programs. So I obviously can't. I'm not in the pharmacological sciences. I don't know. There's nothing, you can apply for as many programs as you want. So, we often get applicants. So the laboratories take from many different programs as well. So for example, I have a master's students from the neuroscience program in my lab. So there's no problem. There'll be no conflict. We are independent from each other in our application processes. So feel free.
Thank you.
Is it Raga?
Hello. I have one question. Actually, I've already applied for the fall 2022 master's program for pharmacology. So when can I know your decision on my application?
Martin, do you have a timeline through the admissions committee?
I can say that our deadline is February 14th for all applications. So we typically don't send out any notices prior to that. But if you have a very strong application, you might get an initial interview request prior to that date. And since we don't make offers until after we've done interviews, you'll have to wait and see first if you get an interview and then how things go.
Okay. Thank you.
Hello, Miss Bass.
Hi.
Hello. Good morning, Bass. I have one and only doubt. As you said earlier, like you will accept only 10 admissions per academic year. May I know, like, why the count is very low?
I don't think so I mean that's just a general number. We've accepted more before. We often accept less. It depends on who's applying. One of the things about our program is, again, it's research based. So what that means is we have to have a lab to put you in, right? And so I believe we can easily place 10 students. We could probably place a few more. So it depends on how many people are applying. So I wouldn't let that number worry you. There's a lot of things that go into that. Students, we often have lots of applicants. We often accept more than 10, knowing that a large number of students will go into a different program or change their mind. So, but around 10 is usually a pretty solid number for us to actually get into that actually matriculate to the program, and we'll start in the fall. So, but yeah, we had, I don't know how many did we have last year. Liz, do you remember? It was more than 10, wasn't it? I forget. But it was,
around 10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know all the programs had a lot of students last year. So it might be a slightly more competitive, but every year we have labs that, it's a little bit tough because some students are way more picky than others, but every year we always have labs that are looking and that don't have a student place. So we can take more than 10 for sure. It's just, who's qualified and who decides to come.
Oh, okay. And one more doubt I have, like whether the count is for the international applicants or for the whole batch of the freshmen.
That's everyone, but we have a large number of international applicants. So so we don't really separate them. I mean, I would say we usually have more international applicants than we do domestic. I don't know, applicants, students. So who actually comes, the international students are well represented. So we don't really separate them. There's no disadvantage for being international in the admissions process for an MS in our program.
Okay. Thank
so
you.
I wouldn't worry about that.
Okay, like I'm much worried about the count actually, so that's why I raised a doubt about that.
So the bottom line is, if you're a strong candidate, then you're likely to get, we always analyze it. We won't take too many students, but the count is usually based on the number. We often give, we always give more acceptances than we never give more than we could actually accommodate, but there's always students who either go into a different program or decide not to get a master's. So we give out more acceptances than 10.
Okay. Thank you, Miss Bass.
I think we had some chat questions. So is TOEFL required? Martin, do you want to answer that? I forget what the actual rules are.
Our international students are required to have some English language proficiency exam representation. So it could be TOEFL, it could be IELTS, it could be, there's different tests that you can take. And because of COVID and everything, and the fact that a lot of people are sort of homebound, there are some internet-based tests too. So some of the tests have a home component that can be used. Yeah, Duolingo is one of them. I would have to look at the list of all of them that are being considered, but they're still being considered for fall of 2022. So if there is an internet-based one for you to do at home, it would still be allowed in fall of 2022. And maybe Beth would want to chime in on this if she has something else she wants to add, but
Yeah, I think that covers it. It's a pretty long list right now. And even TOEFL, I think, has a home version now that's accepted in some countries. So we're being very flexible in the types of English proficiency tests we'll accept. But it is required for international students from countries where English is not considered the native language. If you're from one of those countries, then you would be expected to provide some kind of proof of English proficiency. And since I'm chiming into that same student had a question about unofficial transcripts, we have a completely online application process. So we work with unofficial transcripts for the initial review of your application. And then students are asked, if you're going to enroll, we would ask you to provide the official copies to verify those unofficial transcripts.
And the I-20 request form.
Beth, why don't you take that one?
Okay, I'll talk about that one too. So if you are an accepted international student and you reply to say, yes, I'm accepting the offer, I'm going to enroll at UB, then Martin would work with UB's Office of International Admissions to request your I-20 once you had provided the financial documents that are required for the preparation of that document. So that's coordinated through the department office and international admissions, and then they're actually issuing electronic I-20s now. So you would get a digital copy that you could use for your visa appointment at your consulate or embassy.
So there's a question, does UB provide STEM program? I'm not sure what that means. Can you elaborate on that? I think that was Vernica. Okay, so master's degree, there's another question, maybe while Vernica gives us a little bit more detail about her question, I'll go on ahead. Are funding opportunities such as graduate assistantships available in the department? Generally speaking, we don't have any set like TA, teaching assistants, or any sort of program that you could come in and for example make money or have any sort of tuition help. That said, a lot of our students do have part-time jobs, so it becomes a little bit more problematic, I think, for international students. So Martin, I don't know if you have any experience with this. Do our international students usually do any sort of work at the university or elsewhere?
There are no tuition scholarships, and as far as any other way to make money, the best that you would be able to do is work on campus as in an hourly capacity, and it has to be, like I said, on campus, so probably in a lab of somebody that you're either working with or that's nearby to the lab that you're in. So it's not a lot, and it's difficult to do with your studies, so I wouldn't count on it.
Yeah, so I think that there's some possibility, and sometimes when you get here you can find opportunities, but it's difficult for international students because of the visa issues. But the department does not have any any standardized process to do that, and so. So I guess moving on, the question is the MS in pharmacology a STEM program? Okay, so yeah, I know STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, math. So we would definitely qualify. So I'm not sure exactly what is leading up to that question, but yeah, we're a part of what is considered biomedical science. If that has something to do with medical school applications, I could speak to that more directly, but I'm not sure if that's where that question is heading. So when you apply to medical school, they sort of categorize the different classes into sort of like basic science and then sort of like healthcare related. But so there's been a lot of questions. Abdul, do you still have a question? I see the hand raised.
Yes, please. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes, what I would like to find out is, actually I have maybe two quick questions. I want to know if there's a procedure for transferring students from the master's program in pharmacology onto a PhD program, if you have that route. And also, I would like to find out if you have collaborative studies with other lab outside the university where students go out there to get industrial or practical training. Do you collaborate with other research institutions for students to gain more research experience?
Yeah. So, let me answer the first one, which was, so your first question was, geez, I've already forgotten it.
Pathways to the PhD. So
Okay,
master's to PhD.
Yeah, thank you. So it is a lot of our students will actually go on to a PhD, within the department. There's a lot of ways to do that. The way, as a director of graduate studies, I would encourage you to finish your master's. That way you make sure you have that degree. If you find a laboratory that you really like, it's not uncommon for you to get your master's there and then to continue as a PhD student. We can do a direct admissions process, is what it's called, where you can apply for direct admissions to the department. You would talk to me, I think, and your mentor about that prior to initiating that process. It's not done often, but it's a very common thing. We've done that several times over the past few years. But that being said, you can also, once you have your master's degree, I personally think that you should apply for a lot of programs, because once you have your master's degree, you'll be competitive for a PhD in many different programs out there. So UB has a fantastic program called PPBS, or PhD in biomedical, the PhD program in biomedical sciences. And that's a nice umbrella program. So you come in, you pick your laboratory. It can be in pharmacology, or it can be in any other laboratory, basically within the medical school. And so that's a nice program, because if you decide you want to go in a slightly different direction, maybe you want to do something other than the research you did as a master's student, that's a good way to do that. So there's multiple ways that you can transition from a master's to a PhD program. But I personally prefer that the students get their MS, so they have their degree, and then they sort of cast a broad net, because as much as I like the PhD program at my university, I think that you'll find that having a master's from our department will put you in a good position for any number of programs out there. So the second question was then, what was it? I don't think I had my coffee this morning.
I think it was internships, like career placement opportunities.
Okay. Yeah. So every lab I know does collaborate with folks outside of UB. In terms of how that works with master's students, there are some opportunities out there to do internships and things like that. I've had some of my students do it. But generally speaking, for the 2 years that you're here, we like you to really dedicate that time to the lab. There are always possibilities to go out and get additional training. But I think what you'll find is that, those 2 years you're at UB, you're not even you're going to be so focused on your research and getting down the techniques that you need for your own research project, that generally you don't need to go out. That being said, I work with my students. Sometimes it depends on your mentor a little bit, but I work with my students to figure out what they want to do with their career. And then I try to make sure they have opportunities so that they can build up their CV, their curriculum vitae, so that when they finish, they'll be competitive for whatever career they're interested in. So for example, if you're interested in science policy, there's a lot of workshops that you can attend. There's a lot of career forums and panels you can attend. There might be for example, some conferences that you can go to where you start to get your foot in the door and figure out, well, what is it about science communication that do I want to do? Do I want to work for a company? Do I want to work for the government? You know, do I want to work with kids or whatever? And so I try to make sure that there's opportunities for you to do those types of things. If you're interested in industry and you're interested in bioinformatics, I don't do a lot of bioinformatics, but I have absolutely no problem with setting you up. So for an opportunity to get at least some inkling of what bioinformatics means. So to give you an example, I had one student who was really interested in computational neuroscience, and that's not something that's done a lot at UB. And so I had a collaborator in the math department where I gave her the time to go to the math department, and she attended lab meetings, she attended journal clubs, so that she could work with folks who did computational neuroscience and see if that's really the career that she wanted. She wound up getting a master's degree in my lab. And she wound up actually going into the PhD program, direct admissions, I think, into neuroscience. So there are opportunities, but there's no formal program to do internships and things like that through the department. So I think Shivam had a question about selecting a mentor based on interests. And Liz responded to that, but yes, you will have the opportunity to select your mentor based on who's looking for a student within the department. And there's always a fair number of people who are looking. And we all often have new faculty that join the department. So if you look at our website, you'll see the primary faculty in the department. But we also have a long list of volunteer faculty and adjuncts that are that you can actually join their laboratory, even though their primary appointment isn't in pharmacology. So we have folks from, cardiovascular, RIA, I guess, the Research Institute on Addictions. Where else do we have folks, Liz?
Psychology is a big one.
Psychology.
Supriya's
in, I forget her department. She just started, Dr. Mahajan.
She's the Department of Medicine.
Yeah. So I think that's through the Vascular Institute. But yeah, so we have a lot of faculty who take students from the pharmacology program. So your coursework would be pharmacology. Usually these folks have some research that's pharmacology oriented. So yeah, there's a lot of opportunities out there. Some very interesting research going on. It's not, I'm just mentioning it because if you go to the website and you look at the faculty list there, it's not always clear that there's actually a lot more that can take a student than what's listed on our website. Let's see. There's a course in Abdul has a question. Does a course in pharmacology during my undergraduate studies give me a better chance of getting accepted, or several internships in the field of pharmacology? I mean, certainly having a degree in pharmacology already helps you a little bit because we know that you know what you're getting into. But we accept students with a fairly broad range of background. So most, biology, chemistry, biochemistry, those sorts of students often apply for our programs. There are some students, especially international students, where pharmacology or pharmaceutical sciences is I think, a fairly common major at the undergraduate level. So we certainly get a large number of those. One thing that sometimes surprises people is we take a fairly large number of psychology students. The department has a lot of neuropharmacology. So we do a lot of drugs in the brain type of research. And so psychology students often do quite well in our program. So they come from a broad background. But certainly if you have some sort of pharmacology oriented undergraduate degree, it shows that you at least understand what pharmacology is and are serious about it. And Liz posted a link to our faculty. And again, I think that's just the primary faculty, but we also have a lot of volunteer faculty that are not listed, I believe.
They've added a few of the collaborating faculty. Not all, but there are some.
Okay, good. Yeah. So for example, this last fall, we had added a new faculty member who took 2 students. But let's see. And so Liz has also posted our Instagram and Twitter. So I would go there at UB Farm Talks and take a look. There's always a lot going on. And then I think Martin listed the requirements for English language proficiency. So I'm sure all of you can see that, but if there's any questions, I believe we're recording this session, so that'll be posted for anybody who missed it, or if you need to go back. Feel free to email me or Liz or Martin directly if you have any questions. We're here to help. We like to have a large, diverse student population in the department. There's always room for a lot of master students. They bring a lot to the department. We like to see nice, enthusiastic candidates. And again, we realize that a master's degree is usually a stepping stone to something else. And so I can't emphasize enough to use your personal statement to address why it is that you want a master's degree. And if you think your application has any weaknesses or things that you wish you can work on, then you should talk about it in your personal statement. So we like to see students who can, think about, where they're at and where they want to be and how they want to get there. And so the personal statement goes a long way to showing whether or not you have that maturity to really think about what it is you're trying to do and where you're trying to go.
Well, everyone had such great questions.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Bass, for all your time, and Martin and Liz for sharing this information with the students. This is great. So if there aren't any other questions, I think we'll go ahead and wrap up. So thanks for coming. And again, as Dr. Bass said, we are recording this, so we will have that available. So feel free to share it with other folks who maybe couldn't make it, or if you want to go back and refer, that's a good tool as well. So thanks again for being here, and hopefully we'll see your application soon.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for asking such good questions. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.